Hey there, do you dream of escaping into a book? Maybe your escape includes a cozy cabin in the mountains or a magical town along the coast. Either way, you're in the right place. Welcome to Literary Escapes with me, Becky. This year on the podcast, we're exploring the United States. So every week I'm going to bring you a new book set in a different state. So let's see where we're going today.
Welcome back to the Literary Escape podcast. I am your host, Becky Lee, and I have a fun guest with me today. We are continuing our trek across the United States, and today we are stopping off in Arizona, a beautiful state, which I've only visited once or twice, but we have Lynne M. Spreen, who is our tour guide today. So welcome, Lynne.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am thrilled to have you. My whole experience with Arizona, I think I lived in Colorado and I worked in sales, and we had a meeting down in maybe Flagstaff. And so I was in a conference room all day. And so that was my, that in the airport. And that was like the extent of my Arizona. So hopefully yours is a little
Seriously,
more than
mine. My book is more than sitting in a conference room, although I'm right there with you. I had a corporate career before I started writing, and I totally get that, going to a city and not seeing the city. But,
yeah.
To be honest, I do not live in Arizona, but
Yeah.
I first discovered Sedona, which, if your guests don't know, it's right about in the middle of the state.
Okay.
It's high desert. It's characterized by beautiful, tall, red rock found buttes and spires, and it's considered quite a spiritual place.
Mm-hmm.
There are said to be vortexes in the city, which are said to be doors into other worlds. Although I don't write about, magical realism or anything like that. I write about regular old contemporary romance, but it is set in what I consider to be one of the most beautiful places in the world. So the first time I ever went there, I had no idea where I was going. It was about 30 years ago, and I was, a busy, hardworking mother, and my husband at the time had a cousin who was getting married in Sedona, and he said, let's go to Sedona and attend the wedding. And I said, sure. Probably because I wasn't paying that much attention. Fine, I'll get in the car and take me wherever you need me to go, and then I'll go back Monday morning and start working again, because that was my life at the time. I was working very hard. So we go to this hotel. It's nighttime. It's winter. We're exhausted. I go to bed. I get up the next morning, and I'm wondering, where am I? I fling open we were at this hotel that had, like a balcony. We were up on the second or third floor, and I fling open the French doors, and I about fell to my knees. It was so beautiful.
Oh, man.
I was looking across this river canyon to these red rock formations that were capped with snow against a bright blue sky. It was like somebody had just opened up heaven or something.
I can't even imagine that. How gorgeous.
It was unbelievable. And the wedding was beautiful, both in a human way and kind of in a almost a Native American spiritual way. So it always made a real mark on me. And so I really wanted to convey the beauty and magic of that place. I will confess, people who know Sedona are right now like looking at me kind of cockeyed, thinking, what, really? Sedona has become, it's overly loved in the time since I first saw it. The world has become aware of it, and there are traffic jams, and there's like a single file line up hiking up the mountain to the vortex.
Right.
It's a lot
touristy,
less magical in a way. I work them into my stories, but I don't dwell on that because I want to remember the beauty of it. And I have had reviewers write and say, people who have read the book say, I lived there from this date to this date, and that was how it used to be, and I just love it so much. Thank you for describing it again.
Oh,
so
I love that.
that was neat. And
That's like the
it is,
ultimate compliment, I think, when somebody who lives
yeah.
there or lived there is like, ah, yeah.
Oh, I know. I wrote a series. The first book was, this is an old series, but the first book was based in North Dakota. And apparently I did such a good job describing it that people were really kind of disappointed in me when I told them I'm a Southern California girl. I never lived in North Dakota. I visited a lot because my family is there. But anyway, back to
That's
Arizona.
funny.
There are plenty of places in Arizona that are absolutely beautiful and spectacular. One of the first things that I always notice when I drive there from Southern California is the color of the soil. The dirt changes from brown to red.
That's so
And
crazy.
against,
Yeah.
I know it's beautiful. And against the backdrop of, if you go in the right season, there are desert wildflowers
Yeah.
everywhere. The cactus is blooming. Um, so it is just an artistic dream. You take certain drives up there at certain times of the year, and the road will be lined with photographers.
That's really
So
cool. Yeah. It's
double-edged
not
sword.
shocking, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine the diversity in our country of geography,
Oh, you are so
all the
right.
different places that are just stunningly beautiful. There's
We're
so
so
many different
lucky.
things in our country, and I
I
I find that
know.
amazing. I love that.
Thank you for mentioning that. That is one of the, even California, my home state, has so many different worlds in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, in the United States, we are really blessed that there is so much diversity of geography. When I did write the book for North Dakota, the one that I just mentioned, um, we were driving through the wilderness, and living in California, you think, oh my God, it's going to be wall to wall cement at some point. But driving north from Colorado to North Dakota, you see so much open land. You realize this land will never be covered.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's magnificent.
For a few years, I lived in Colorado and I was in sales, and my sales territory was everything north of Denver. So I
Okay.
had northern Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana, which are
Yeah.
obviously huge states. And I had like
Yeah. But you
one
know what I'm
customer
talking
in each
about.
state. And
Yeah.
it would take me all day to get from one customer to the other because there's nobody, no offense to
I
anybody
know.
that lives in either of those states,
Bring
but
your lunch. Pack your
yeah,
lunch
yeah,
because
and
there is
definitely
nowhere to
your
eat.
skis if you're going in the right season.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. 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 I love that about our country. I really
Yeah.
do. Um, Before we move away, if we're going to, from talking about the Sedona area
Yeah.
to maybe other things like my writing or challenges of writing or whatever, the things I love to blab about, and I'll probably commandeer the conversation.
It's
Sorry.
all good.
Um, okay, is I wanted to talk about one of the places that I've written about in my, it's a 3-book series, the Sedona series that I wrote. Um, and one of my favorite places that I've ever been is sort of nondescript. When you drive up, you just see kind of uh, a knoll,
Okay.
a little mound, a little hill, and there are pathways, and it's dry. There's no, there's plants everywhere, and they're all labeled, because they are what the Native Americans used for medicine and food and that kind of
Okay.
thing. So it's interesting, but there are no trees for shade, and it can be
Hmm.
kind of glaring and
Right.
difficult. But there are two things on this property of what they call Montezuma Well. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's National Geographic said that this area was used as a resting place as long ago as 9,000 years. There have been
Holy
people living
moly.
through there. And the reason is because it's the site of a big caldera that filled in with water. It's like a volcanic caldera that it became a lake right out in the middle of nowhere, out in the
Isn't
middle
that
of the dry
crazy?
desert. So there's
Wow.
this well, they call it, because there's water coming in and water shooting out. And along the inside of the caldera above the water line are the famous, like Anasazi ruins, little homes built into the rock
Yeah.
face. So that's amazing to look at. But there's a thing called the Pit House. There's the remains of a small settlement there, on the upper level above the
Okay.
water. And the pit house, they estimate, is about 1,000 years old.
Holy moly.
The first time I ever went there, it's just, all it is a ruin. It's covered with this cheap looking, aluminum cover, kind of like somebody's storage area. But I was there and I was thinking, 1,000 years ago, what was going on in the rest of the world? What was going on in Europe? What was going on? I'm no historian, I don't know, but it was like,
Right.
to me, it was amazing to think there were humans here, doing what they were doing with their primitive tools and their knowledge of, medicine and that kind of thing. And at the same time, in Europe, conquerors were conquering. And I think it was
Yeah.
the Iron Age or something. Just the way that the world developed was different. So I was really moved by that. And I happened to look up, and in this pure blue robin's egg sky, there was a jet going over.
Oh
And the
man.
juxtaposition of the two
Yeah.
things, it's like,
Whew.
God, it was like, it
That's
moved me so much because I got such a sense of time passing and the preciousness of time, and
yeah.
how really minuscule we are, and how we need to make the most of our lives, the time that we have,
Amen.
and treasure it.
I
So
that's a
that's
really good
Montezuma
segue
Well, if anybody wants
into
to go see.
that sounds beautiful. But talking about the making the most of the life that you're given and the time that we have here, your characters, well, let me, before I go there, how did you become an author? Because you write about later in life
Mhm.
women, women and men, but your characters are later in life. And so did you become an author later in life?
Yeah, but not for lack of wanting to be an author early in life.
Right,
Uh,
right.
I'm like, your previous guest, I think it was the woman who spoke about Georgia, Ellie Hall, I think was
Yeah.
before me. She was saying, I'm a unicorn. I didn't come to writing early. Well, I did. I started writing. I'm one of those. It's very common to hear people say this, that we wanted to write all our lives. I wanted to write all my life. My mom says I wrote little stories when I was a kid. Sure, I did that, but I had to eat as a grown up.
Right.
It was my son was fond of having a roof over his head, so I
Crazy
became
kid.
practical. Yeah, I know, spoiled brat. Anyway, um, so I loved working though. I kind of came from a difficult home environment, and working was my refuge. And so I loved working, and I
Mm,
climbed the ladder really fast. I was the only kid in my family to get a bachelor's degree. And I worked real hard and got into a professional career. And as much as I loved it, I was in public school district administration. And
oh,
I did that
nice.
for about 30 years. Yeah. And there were times, I'll be honest, where I really did cry thinking, I will never, ever be able to write. I won't have
Yeah.
the time. I won't have the energy. I gave all of it to my job, and that was fine. It was a good job, and I loved it. And
That kind of job, you kind of have to, I
it,
mean,
I told myself I'm using up all my creativity doing my job. It was
yeah.
worthwhile. But I did try to keep the dream alive for your listeners if they are struggling with the same kind of problem. People are busy and they don't always have time to chase after their dreams, but I did keep the dream alive by I subscribed to Writer's Digest, and I read every issue, and there were always things in it that fired me up. I wrote a lot of short stories. I kept
Nice.
notes. I practiced. I took classes when I could, like on a Saturday, a
Mm-hmm.
series of Saturday classes somewhere,
Nice.
or um, and that was before the internet. So, you had to get in the car and drive somewhere. But it was
Crazy.
really cool. It fed me. It fed me. Oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
kept me from dying because I needed to write. And so I wasn't able to write until I was older. And I published my first book when I was 58.
Me
It took
too.
me that honest congratulations to us.
Yeah.
Um,
I
it
love
took
that.
me about 8 years to write my book. Did it take you a long time to write yours? Please say yes.
It took
No, okay.
it took me a year to write my first book.
Okay.
And
Well, I wrote it over and
yeah.
over again, and I don't know. It seemed like I'd go to a conference and they'd say, don't do what you're doing, and I'd have to throw away like 50 pages.
I was so naive that I didn't know any better, which I think ignorance was bliss.
Was it a good book though? I
I
read your
like it.
latest one, but I didn't read your first one. Which
Yeah,
one?
first one is called Finding Dolly.
That's your first.
That was my first book. Yeah.
I just read that. That's beautiful. I love that book.
I had some
Are you?
really wonderful people help me. But yeah, that was my
Wow.
first one. And unlike you, writing was not the path that I had seen for myself. And an idea came to me at like 2:00 in the morning and wouldn't leave me. And I called a friend of mine who is a writer, and I'm like, what do I do with this? I'm not a writer. And she's like, write it, no big deal. And so I just wrote it.
Well, you must have a natural storytelling ability and also good editors. It's a
I
good
did
book
have some good
cover.
editors. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
It
but thank
looks
you. I
commercially
appreciate that.
very viable. I enjoyed reading it. And I'm
Thank you.
surprised
I
it's your
appreciate
first
that.
effort.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So it took me a while to actually be able to start writing, but that was a blessing in a way because being older, I had something I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to talk about was what it was like being older. I'm
Nice.
fascinated by this.
Yeah.
And so my first series it's kind of it's women's fiction, but it's also with romance.
Okay.
Primarily the woman's journey. But then the series that we're talking about today,
The
the
Sedona
Sedona
one. Yeah.
series, is completely silver romance.
I
It's
love
all
it.
about.
I read, yeah, the Starting Over in Sedona. I love that book. I thought
Did
that
you?
I am creating space in my reading to read the other two, because
Well, thank you.
I'm hoping John's story is next, because I really want to hear his story.
I have to tell you, yeah, I kind of did a hook at the end, and somebody wrote a review and said, "Who doesn't love a guy like hitching up his tool belt to go solve the problem?"
I love that.
But yeah, he is the main romantic lead in the second book. And in fact, my editor, at the end of the book, we were talking about it, and she goes, "Yeah, I really like John." She goes, "Is he based on a real character?" And
Kind of like
I
to
had
meet
to say
him.
no. Sorry.
That's so
If I
funny.
could, I'd introduce you to him, but he's not really in my
Yeah,
head.
I
So
love that. That's when you know you've created a good character.
yeah, well, it's funny that you come up with things
Mm-hmm.
and you think this was all in my imagination. My mom used to look at me and say, "Lynn, what an imagination." And it wasn't like a good thing. It was like,
Exactly.
"Stop talking, Lynn. I'm tired." But what motivated me, I want to tell you this because I think that this will resonate. I don't think a lot of people think about this right now, but they will. When I read a romance, yeah, I read romance all the time now, and I love
Yeah.
it because it's so optimistic.
Yeah. You
There's
know
always a
you're going to
happy
have a
end.
happy ending.
I
And
I can handle a not happy ending if the point is good enough,
yeah.
Um, but I really, really do like romance. It's just that a lot of the romance is primarily about young people. It's
Mm-hmm.
easy to write about people that are gorgeous.
Yeah.
There's more talk now about. I just read an article this morning in Writer's Digest magazine in a newsletter that I get about writing diversity in body shapes.
Yeah.
And it was by someone who is more generously proportioned. And she was saying we need to write more about people who look like real people.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote her back and I said, yeah, like how
Yeah.
about people over 60? All my characters are over, well, not all of them, but in the first book that you read, they're over 60.
Yeah. I
And
love that.
it's hot. It's closed door because I think that I'm too embarrassed to write about sex
I
graphically.
feel yeah.
And I'm not sure I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I did experiment with that with one of my novels earlier, and it was great, but
Yeah.
my kids read it, and I
Right.
don't
Same.
want that to
And
happen.
yeah. No
Thank
thanks.
God my mom's passed. All right, rest in peace. But
Yeah.
but I always want to know in a regular romance that I read today, I always want to know what happens 30 years later.
Mm-hmm.
It's like easy to well, it's not easy to write about a pregnancy and a romance and all that kind of stuff. But the happy ever after very frequently is about these beautiful people who walk off into the sunset.
Yeah.
And maybe, a lot of times there's a happy news of a pregnancy. And I think, yeah, well, that's easy. What about like the third book in my Sedona series is about a couple they're 48 years old, and the woman is flipping out because her last kid just went to college. And she's looking at her husband going,
Ah,
oh, who are you again?
yeah.
And she freaks out. And so the whole romance is about a married couple who falls out of love. And then the question is, will they come back together again? I
Nice.
think that's
I love
like
that.
realistic.
I love
As
that.
you know, in
Yeah.
starting over in Sedona, there's a 60-year-old woman who is finally coming out of the fog of grief.
Yeah.
And she wants to finally do the thing that she wants to do, because how often do we do so much for others?
Well,
In fact,
yeah, being a woman, that's a big part of our lives.
it
If you have
it is.
children, you have to. I mean, you have to give, at least for a while, part of your life to your children.
Dr. Christiane Northrup, I don't know if you know her, but she
Mm-mm.
was like the menopause doctor for a long time. I haven't followed her recently, but she did a lot of books, and she became famous talking about menopause and women going through menopause and what their bodies were doing chemically and all that kind of stuff. And she had a theory. I don't think it was ever proven scientifically, but I think it's right. She had this theory that your chemistry changes in such a way when you go through puberty that you become like in a fog of compliance in a way. No, I'm not saying women are compliant at that age. I'm just saying it takes a lot to be patient enough to raise helpless little infants.
Yeah.
You become sleep deprived, your body changes, you can have health issues, it can cause drama in the family. It's difficult. Her theory is that this chemistry helps you be a better mother, be a good mother, to be
Interesting.
patient, and um, it's kind of like it's a healthful thing to keep the species going.
Right.
But then
Right.
when you reach menopause, your chemistry changes,
It's,
and
I
that
was reading a book, I think it's called the Menopause Manifesto, and it was talking about how puberty is the onset of all of your hormones, and menopause is like the other end of it.
the reversal.
Yeah.
Well, and so you often hear about women like they go through menopause and they have a different attitude. You hear about men and women changing places when they get older. The men get kind of soft and sweet and kind, and the women get kind of tough and mean and bitchy and selfish, and like the men have been all this time. No, I'm
Right,
just
right.
kidding. You probably have male listeners. I don't mean to be offensive, um, but it does change. And Dr. Northrup had the idea that maybe this chemistry, the balance of it shifted so that because you were no longer needed to be that nurturing, not complacent, but peaceful,
Yeah,
loving, that soft place to land for your kids. So
that's interesting.
I
Yeah.
think what I want to write about is what happens in that phase.
Yeah.
And one of the characteristics of my stories is that I always like to put in a place where a woman who is older has a moment of being a badass,
I love
that she
that.
does something, yeah, that she does something that's just so kick-ass that you're reading it and you're thinking, oh yeah, oh
Or
yeah, baby, that's
making a
good.
choice like for herself.
Powerful.
It
Yeah.
is. It totally is.
Finally, yes.
Yeah.
Um, in in um in Sedona, in the Starting Over in Sedona book, she has a moment where she is finally painting. She's
Hmm.
wanted to paint all her life, but
Yeah,
she had to move with her military husband and her kids, and she really had to be, the logistics officer for her family the
for
whole time.
sure.
And she hasn't really been able to focus on painting. And when she starts to paint like these lackluster landscapes, and they just look stupid, and
Two in her
she's
head
getting
versus her heart.
frustrated. Yeah. And then when she finally gets mad enough to let it loose, it has like an
Ooh,
effect on
power.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has an effect. And in the second book, the main character is real peaceful and reticent and delicate and polite and everything, and she does something that's just
I can't wait.
it's tough.
I love
I
that.
always have a part in my book where the woman goes big,
Nice.
and I think that readers really like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as women, as we get older, we also don't care as much what people
I
think.
know. I know.
I mean, I don't. I
Good.
I hope to I hope readers resonate with my book, kind of a thing. But I also know that I'm still going to write the story that's in my heart because that's the story I was given. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
so
There's so much. See, what you're talking about right now is this power that we get when we're older.
mhm.
And I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about, I'm like trying to guess how old you are, but I don't want you to say, but I will say that I'm 70 and I'm like really blessed with youth and health and vigor and everything else. And my mom died when she was 2 weeks short of 97. And I think
Oh,
I'm going to end up the
holy
same
moly.
way.
Yeah,
I know. And she was like, until like the last 2 weeks, she was totally into everything. She knew what was going on.
that's
She was
awesome.
blessed not to lose her marbles or anything. And the thing is, you're talking about something that happens later in life that's so powerful. And all we look at is what do we look like? How
Yeah.
fertile are we? Do we have like nice perky boobs? And or do we the whole culture, everything about the culture
Yeah.
is about like how reproductive do we look?
Mhm.
Honestly, when you get right down
True.
to it, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
What we are good at my age is this power and wisdom and wit and cleverness and survival and support that we can give our loved ones that
Yeah.
you can't see it.
Yeah.
It's invisible. And so I used to do a talk when I would do my book talks. One of the things I would do is I had this list of Lynne's top 10 reasons to feel great about getting older. And there are some amazing things that happen with your brain and with the rest of you that
Yeah.
it's invisible, but it's powerful. But because in this culture we're so used to putting ourselves down for being old,
Mhm.
um, we don't talk about the good stuff.
I love
So
getting older. Yeah. Every
I
decade
frequently call
gets
myself
better.
old.
Yeah.
It does.
I love
It
it.
does.
Yeah.
Somebody told me that the 70s are like the last great decade. So this is my year of accomplishment. But
I
I
love
have
that.
writer friends who are in the 80s that are killing it.
Yeah.
So it's not the same. We don't know what the future is because we're already doing so well now.
Well, and yeah, and I think that as long as a person is able to do what they want to do,
Hmm.
that there's no reason to stop being creative and producing whatever it is that you produce. And, whether it's baking or painting or writing, or I think
Yeah.
as long as you can do it and it keeps you going, do it, you
Hmm.
know? Love
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'm in some writers groups and a lot of the younger people, my heart breaks for them. And I try and like not talk so much about what I've done because I'm in a good place. I don't have to raise kids and,
Mhm.
I'm retired now. And
These women
I,
that write around having kids, and it's like, whoa,
I,
I could
I
barely
just,
make dinner.
well, I waited 30 years to write because I didn't have, I couldn't do both.
Life happens.
I
And
could
that's,
not.
I mean,
Hmm.
life goes in seasons, and embracing whatever season you're in is
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
And, I had caregiving for a long time, both my kids and then my mom. And now I'm in a season where my kids are gone. I don't have, other than my husband and I, there are no other responsibilities. And I am enjoying being able to cultivate my creativity in a very new way.
Oh,
And it's
thank you. That
really,
is
really
so
cool.
beautiful. That is exact. Hallelujah. That is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have it good.
we
My
do.
mom lived with us for 15 months
Wow.
because she was on oxygen and stuff. And so, and then she went to live in a a really nice home. Everybody loved it. She was very happy there because we were too boring for her. My husband and I are like, we're real introverted and quiet. We go to bed early and all that kind of stuff. And she was like, what are we doing here? You know, she was
Can't
bored.
we like do
So,
something?
so at like 94
That
and a
is,
half, she moved to a place where there's more action, you know.
oh
But
my
I
gosh, I love that.
but I know what you're saying about like the lack of responsibility. It's such a blessing. And so I keep a low profile around younger people because they have it so tough.
They do. They do. And that's, my kids are just starting out and bless them, you
I
know?
know. I
So,
know. It's like I wouldn't go back. You know, I'd like to be able to, have high buildings, tall buildings with a single bound like I used to be able to, but
yeah, I wish my knees
I'll
were a
take what
little
I got.
more bouncy, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can I can get
Yeah.
up a little slower and be okay with that, that's
Yep.
all good.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit. We've talked about it some, but let's talk a little bit about starting over in Sedona. That's the book that book club is reading. And as you mentioned, your main characters are both 60 plus, or 60 and 60 plus. And the woman, her sister, who inherited the family property, has reached out to her after many years of estrangement and wants her to come visit, and she assumes it's because she's dying. And so that's the start of it.
Yeah, it's a perfect, to me, it's kind of a representation of what happens in some families. There's big breakups and then there's estrangements, and finally down the road, maybe they get together again. Well, she didn't just inherit the family homestead, she extorted it from her mother. The bad sister was a sociopath, and she finally reaches out to my character later in life and says, where you been? Sedona's nice in the springtime and I'm dying.
Yeah.
And so my character Sue goes to see what's up and finds out, and she's like driving there thinking, oh, please, please leave me the land. I'm hoping I finally
Yeah. Finally get
life,
this land.
everything is corrected and I get to get my family's homestead. And she gets there and she gets two surprises. One is that the land isn't what she expected anymore.
Right.
And two is that there's a Roseanne, the bad sister, has left it not just to her, but to a greedy developer who is going to develop the land.
Yes.
And so they have to negotiate between keeping the land whole and maintaining it as the beautiful homestead, the tribute to her family that it was. And actually, she wants to make an artist colony out of it,
Yeah.
a
I love
creative
the
place
idea of
where
it. Yeah.
you can build a community of sisters. And, but Raphael is thinking, you know, this is
This
big
money
money.
is land. Yeah. This land is money.
You could live anywhere, honey. So
Yeah.
they declare a truce for a month and they work
A
together to
lot
kind of
happens
work
in
on the
that month.
property. Oh, it's so much fun.
It's good stuff.
I had so much fun with that. I went back and was like rereading some parts out loud to, be in preparation for making it into an audiobook. And sometimes you do that with bated breath. You're not sure what you're going to see,
Yeah.
Oh no, did I write that?
Yee.
And I have to say, except for finding a couple of typos, I was really pleased. I was laughing and everything.
Yeah.
So she and Raphael have to fight it out. And there's other people. There's some subplots and
Mm-hmm.
some mysticism and
A lot of good
vortexes
sub
and
or
art. Yeah.
side characters and subplots. I
Yeah.
enjoyed all of that. Yeah.
I had fun with it. Thank you.
That's
Yeah, that
one
was
of
a
the
lot of fun.
one of the things I really enjoy about authors, and this is a big thing in romance, especially like indie published romance, is the series. And I love being able to stay in the world a little bit longer and getting to know
Yeah.
the side characters and getting to see the little bit of the post happy ever after in some of the characters that you've already met, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's, I think my first well, as a kid, they weren't romance, but like Nancy Drew and you know, in those books, you followed characters as they grew up. And
Yeah.
you know, you got to see all these different other characters and get pieces of them as you went. And but Debbie Maycomer was a big one for me, and
Oh
reading her
yeah.
books. And I can't even remember the name of the town now. I'm sorry, but
It might have been Cedar Cove. That was maybe
yeah,
the first one that I read of hers introduced me to the beauty of a series, and I read like all 12
exactly.
books.
Yeah, and getting to like live in that place for a while and
I
meet the
know.
whole neighborhood. And that was such a really cool thing because I
I know.
don't
I just
remember
finished.
having done that before.
Yeah, that was my first series too.
Yeah, that's so
Um,
cool.
I I just finished reading Kristen Hanna's The Women, and
My
I
sister
don't know if
just
you've
finished
read
that
it.
one.
Oh my gosh, I recommend it. But at the end, it's like, well, what?
Yeah.
What? I suppose you're supposed to allow your imagination to
Mm-hmm.
go on to what happens over the next few years. Of course, that's how a book ends. But we're
Mm-hmm.
used to series now, and it's not like I want
Yeah.
a series of Kristen Hanna's The Women because it was too heavy. But it was that's what kind of sometimes I think of writing fan fiction where I come to the end
Yeah.
of one of the younger people romances by one of our good authors,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I just want to like grab
Pick
their
it up and
people
give
and
them a new life 30
add
years
30
later or
years
something.
to it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what, like, they're both still alive, you
Yeah.
know? I
Yeah.
mean, what happened? Did they have kids? Did their kids make it?
Yeah.
Did one of them have an affair? Did they
Do they still like each other? I mean,
did they
yeah.
still like each other?
Yeah.
What about their parents? Did they fight over caregiving? You
Yeah.
know, not drawing from real life or anything, but
It's it's a thing. And especially, you know, people our age, if you get to our age, you're going to go through your parents aging. And
Mhm.
depending on how that goes, there's sometimes issues with that. And especially if you have
Yeah,
siblings, there's,
yeah,
you know, differences of opinions.
yeah. But the beauty of older age, and this is what I keep trying to put into my books, not in a preachy way, but just in a way to give my readers a reason to celebrate, to feel good. Because I believe in writing hope into my books. My books are
I
always
love
very
that.
lifting and hopeful.
I had a
But the
note on
idea
my
is,
page that said that hope is in your books. And yeah.
oh, it is. And you know what? Now they have this deal where artificial intelligence on Amazon's website goes through and it combs through the reviews and it composes this little paragraph that says, yeah, I know it's creepy.
It
But anyway,
is.
it says, your readers are most interested in the fact that your books have this and that. And hope was one of the things that
Well, that's lovely.
little Mr. AI picked up.
Well
So
done, Mr. AI.
I know. But what I wanted to say is that the beauty of aging is that we become stronger in so many ways.
Hmm.
And it's a superpower. I want
It
people to
really
know
is.
about that. I
Yeah.
want people to know about that. So that's what I try to work into my stories.
I
And
think
the
that
next series after this one is going to be like a 5-book series based in Palm Springs. So
nice. Oh, that'll be lovely. I've not been
yeah.
to Palm Springs, so I can't wait to read that. I just lost my thought. Give me a
I
second.
know I interrupted you. I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. No. This is like my whole day. I have a thought and it goes away. But
Join the club, honey.
that's too many things going in and out of my brain in a day. So um I like that character, you know, you can read about people who are your own age and they aren't just the doddering grandma, you know,
Or
because there's a
yeah,
lot
the
of that.
decrepit prop. I
Yeah.
actually we're a lot of times people that are older are just like they're this useful prop to show the
Or
heroism
a
of the
little bit
younger
of
person.
they're either wise or they're comic relief or, you know, that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
I like having somebody older being the hero. And I
Oh,
think
I
that's pretty
know.
darn
I
cool.
know. My people are
So
so cool. They're
my,
awesome. They're people that you'd want to live next door to and
yeah,
admire
yeah.
all the time.
I haven't read it yet, but my daughter gave me the book, The Thursday Murder Club, I think it's called.
Oh, I love that.
And
I
that's,
read all 4 of those.
yeah, so that's on my list also of books I'm hoping to get to soon. But it was the same thing, this is older characters who are fully developed, not just
They're
a
not
side
only fully
character.
developed, there are some that are more foolish than others because I think a representation of real life, but there are some that are just deadly badass.
I love
And
that.
the main character is, she's scary, you know? I mean,
That's awesome. I can't wait
it's
to read it.
it's fabulous. I loved it. We'll have to
Well,
talk about that at some point.
definitely. It might have to make the plane trip this weekend. So I'll pack that one so that I read it on the plane. That'll be good. So
Can I just mention something?
sure.
I have created a collection of about 60 titles of novels that they're not all romance. Some of them are any genre, but
Okay.
on my website, anyshinything.com, and it's midlife fiction by other authors is
I
what
saw
it's
that.
called. And
Yeah.
there's
I
a
love
whole
that.
page. So
With
if
a
people are looking
curated
for,
list of books
yeah,
of
yeah,
whose main characters are older. And I love that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they're not foolish cartoon characters.
Right.
They're people that you can be impressed by. And so
Yeah.
if anybody's looking for uplifting, impressive stories about older people,
Nice.
go to anyshinything.com and click on midlife fiction by other authors, I think is what it's called. And
We'll
you'll see about
link that in the
60 of them.
show notes.
Okay, that's
Make it
good.
easy
Thank
for
you.
people to find you.
Yeah, it's a cool little library.
That's awesome. I think that's a lot. That's really cool. I think that making things easy for readers is the way to go. Because if I have to do too many steps, it typically doesn't happen.
Forget it. Yeah.
Thank you for curating that. I like that.
Mhm.
Lynne, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fun conversation, and I hope that we
And
have another one
fun.
because I enjoy talking with you.
Well, it's nice meeting you and your whole group. And
Thank you.
I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to upcoming group gatherings and seeing
Yeah.
more of you guys.
I hope you stick around
So,
because it was a lot of fun to have you on the gathering last week or
yes.
last month. So thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And I'll see you around, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to be part of the Read Across the U.S. Book Club, I'd love to have you join us. There is a link in the show notes. So just head down there and click and we will welcome you in. So see you in the book club, I hope. Have a great day and we'll see you next week with a new episode.